The Rock is one of the greatest wrestlers and entertainers in history. His charismatic ability has always shined and takes the room by storm. Rock had the size, look, and abilities both inside and most importantly outside the ring to excel and become one of the all-time greats. The Great One's probably the most charismatic wrestler of all time, right next to Randy Savage. There's few wrestlers that are able to match the electricity he brought and still brings to this very day. Rock had a neck for stealing the show when it came to promos or anything that was outside the ring. He got the fans interested whether he was a face or a heel. He didn't change all that much with both characters at Prime. He was already arrogant, but this video is about both of his roles that he knew very well how to play, heel and face. So the point of this video is basically me talking about a heel character and a face character. With The Rock, there's not a lot of differences when it comes to his character. There's some slight ones. So this video is kind of complicated to make and I'm a bit confused about it, but let's do it. Now let's get into it. All right, character. Coming into his own as a member of the Nation, The Rock Dwayne Johnson exuded the qualities of a world-class wrestler. It wasn't like this though. He emerged as Rocky Maivia, a third-generation wrestler. It didn't appear as if he was going to last too long because of the reception from the crowd. He was a good athlete, but that was all he had at the time. The Nation really opened up The Rock and gave him the very character that took him to the top of entertainment. Heel Rock was very similar to Face Rock. The thing is, there was only some small things that separates them. With Heel Rock, he often threw shots at others and ran away like a coward. He was very calculated when he wants to be, and that would be shown later on in his career as the final boss. But with regular Heel Rock, he always felt like he was above others and didn't forget to mention it every moment he could. It's important to mention that there's 4 different iterations of Heel Rock: Nation Rock, Corporate Rock, Hollywood Rock, and the final boss. They all share insults. Rock has always insulted people regardless of his character. They loved dressing up, but what separates them? Well, let's get into it. Alright. Nation Rock was more sleazy, I'd say. He wasn't as smart as the other versions of him, but he definitely shared the confidence they had. Corporate Rock is often the first version of him many think about, with the sideburns and that iconic look. This version of him was the strongest in terms of insults. He represented the WWF as the corporate champion and was by far the most arrogant and confident version he's ever been. This was The Rock at his finest, and when you look at his character traits, 1999 Rock represented him in a nutshell. It's the most Rock he ever was. Hollywood Rock is more flamboyant and more about the camera. He did show that corporate and nation side, but he was more eccentric, I'd say, and more interested in being the star rather than the best. And Final Boss Rock is about his family, a trait he learned from the Toretto family, I guess. This version was most definitely the most brutal and most driven in his pursuit of keeping the title on Roman Reigns and making sure his family continues to find success. Face Rock, on the other hand, is 3 different iterations: the People's Champion, the People's Champ Part 2, and the Most Electrifying Man from 2003, 2004, 2011, and so on. There's definitely more differences with these versions of him than there is with the heel versions. The People's Champ is Prime Rock, the guy that never smiled, always talked down his opponents, and made even the strongest rival look like absolute jokes. But Rock did represent the people, but didn't do it in a way where he was letting them influence his decisions. It was more about, if you're with me, then it's cool, I'm the People's Champion. People's Champion Part 2 felt like a budget version of the first one. He was smiling more often here and having more fun as opposed to the last version of him, who, even though he made jokes, it was always in the interest of business and talking down his opponents. It was always about talking down his rivals. Most Electrifying Man was more of People's Champ Part 2 and mostly a greatest hits version of The Rock. This version of him didn't reimagine the character at all as opposed to the final boss. There was no trait that was different about him. He was more of a combination of the others. With that said, heel or face character-wise, it's hard to argue against Heel Rock. He had much more interest in that role and put in way more effort when he didn't need to as a face. The only way I could say the face version of him is better is if we use the People's Champion as the only example. That gives every version of him a run for its money, but coupled with this final boss run this year, Heel Rock wins. He's more in his element. 1999 Rock was arguably The Rock's prime, and for a part of it, he was a heel. A heel that was so entertaining and so good that the fans couldn't boo. In some ways, that does mean he was a bad heel, but because he had Stone Cold as his main rival, we can't say he was a bad heel. They brought out the best in each other, and in turn, it gave The Rock some of his career highlights. Hollywood Rock is another version of him that comes to mind. He got the fans behind him once again after they started turning on him right before he left in 2002. Final Boss was amazing, and it's hard to say he was better as a face all around. You know, when I mention all these runs and think about it, all around from a character standpoint. Singular, we can choose the 1999 to 2001 run. You know, that can be the winner, but this video is about his runs in general. I choose Heel Rock. Charisma. Rock has always shown charisma ever since he came to the spotlight as his Rock character in 1997. That level of charisma can be matched by only a select few. What made The Rock so charismatic was his quick-witted answers and his mannerisms. Everything about him felt creative and unique. This was the toughest era to compete in terms of charisma, yet he was at the very top. I think Rock's prime in terms of charisma was 1999. That year was something magical for him. It will never be replicated by somebody again. This guy had moments where he'd outshine Stone Cold Steve Austin, prime Stone Cold, and he put up a big fight. Just think about that build to Backlash 1999. Who do we mention more in that build, Stone Cold or The Rock? The time he stole the Smoking Skull title where he threw him off the bridge in the funeral. Just think about that. All that. Damn. It was a storyline that brought out the very best in The Rock. They couldn't keep him heel for any longer, and that electricity continued to show. That summer of 1999 was all Rock. He was on fire and on a whole other level. I almost can't believe they gave Billy Gunn this guy to feud with. Like, at least let him enjoy his time for a bit around the main event scene. Nope. Maybe Billy Gunn was made for the main event. Who knows? I'm joking. But that feud didn't do him any wonders. Rock was incredible that summer. He did match that level of charisma sometimes, but never for a prolonged period like he did from the end of 1998 to the end of 1999. The summer of 2000 comes to mind as a time where he was absolutely unstoppable in terms of charisma. That time where he was #1 was one of the best times in WWE's history. He led the charge. Nothing was weak about him. His charisma was off the charts. Hollywood Rock comes to mind as another time where his charisma skyrocketed. Rock's charisma is already crazy, but these 3 times in his career where I think he really had the attention of the crowds like never before. These were the 3 most important times I'd say in terms of charisma. If I had to choose, and it was really close, Face Rock. What gives it the edge? What gives Face Rock the edge? This is based on his 1999 to 2001 run. That charisma in the summer of 1999, the summer of 2000, is almost incomparable to any wrestler. There's just select few in wrestling history that came close to that level of charisma. Stone Cold 1998 to 1999 comes to mind, and funny enough, that happened at the very same time. Messi and Ronaldo, that's basically what it was. 2 of the all-time greats bringing out the very best in each other. Face Rock for this one. There was a certain aura with the People's Champ. We didn't interrupt the McMahon-Helmsley family and stand on the ramp. 1 man versus 10. Sunglasses, $500 shirt, $700 shoes, sideburns. Not many can get that right. It's not the clothes themselves, but who's wearing them. That look coupled with his fiery charisma at the time made for a great duo. It has to be Face Rock. I think of countless segments he'd just stand there while the fans are going crazy. He hasn't even spoken yet. They were cheering like he won the title. It was incredible. I do think heel Rock has a chance. Hollywood version of him was off the charts, but Rock in the flesh was in 1999 and 2000. That's who most of us think of when we hear the mere mention of The Rock. Promos. Ever since he got that mic upon his return in 1997, The Rock has never looked back. He had a level of comfort on the mic that was very unusual for somebody his age, let alone somebody who was in their 2nd year in the WWF. That's what allowed for him to rise up the ranks. He was very unconventional in that area because he was throwing some strange insults. Jeff Jarrett had slap nuts, but this guy had an entire chapter dedicated to just insults. It was unique. But take away those insults, regardless of his role, he still was very able to cut promos and create promos that perfectly matched his character. 1998, Rock took it a step ahead and continued to do what got him there. But instead of doing it as he usually did, he ramped it up and began bringing more and more insults to the table, while also displaying his creativity at a higher rate. 1999 was ridiculous. He flew high, and the thing is, Rock is usually criticized for somebody who's incapable of cutting a normal promo, but that's clearly wrong. He has a strong promo awareness that reminds me a lot of John Cena. He knows what works and what doesn't. Even if his promo isn't doing well, he'll fix it by the end. He commands the crowd to focus on him, brings a certain aura around him when he's holding a microphone. He's almost intimidating because there's not many that could get one over him. Stone Cold, Chris Jericho come to mind as someone that did do something in his prime. Later on, of course, John Cena and CM Punk, but there's not a lot of differences with heel and face Rock. The reason why is because his character flows well in either role. He's just more cowardly and more sneaky as a heel. But other than that, they're mostly the same. If I had to give the edge based on the amount of memorable promos, face Rock. I think the way he did Billy Gunn is the reason why I chose him. He obliterated his push. Another random promo I remember is the one where he made Big Show, whose complaints were valid about the Royal Rumble, into such a whiny baby that was incapable of understanding that the refs make mistakes. Rock basically told him, hey, I may have not won the Royal Rumble, but you're a joke. Big Show's right about the Rumble, yet Rock's charisma and talent here mostly made the fans focus on how Big Show's a joke and is tall for no reason, has an ugly-ass haircut, all that. It was crazy. He did have some serious promos, but these mostly happened from time to time. He usually made jokes and got serious in a moment, as evident by this promo of Stone Cold in 2001, this segment with Kurt Angle. Heel Rock does hold some of the best serious promos. His Final Boss character had a lot of them, whereas it's easy to mention the Act 3 promo from WrestleMania 19 earlier in his career. That's probably my favorite promo of his because of how he puts the jokes aside, his ego in check, although he still had a big ego here, and just focuses on the match. And it highlighted that regardless of the jokes, Rock is more than capable of cutting a serious promo. It's just his character didn't need it. If I'm a great wide receiver, why would I try to play defensive tackle? As long as Rock was the people's champ and not the final boss, he didn't need to cut serious promos. And even then, he still knew well. The thing is, people make fun of it like anyone could cut Rock's promos. Other wrestlers can't make those words sound as good. They can't. It's made for The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. They can't. He had that confidence and charisma to make everything he said from jabroni to Rudy Poo sound normal. Who else could do that? No one. The Rock, though, is probably better cutting promos as a face. In-ring. This is something that The Rock has overlooked a lot, and he wasn't trying too hard, I'd say, in his first couple of years, because that's how it was. Stone Cold wrestled a very basic way, which fit in line with his character, as opposed to suplexes and submission moves. His neck injury played a part, of course, but that changed in 2000. With The Rock, it was more of the same. He was a trash talker that wrestled mostly as a brawler. His most notable moves at the time were the headlock, Samoan drop, and a lot of taunts playing into his role as a great one. As time went on, Rock was more seasoned and experienced. Plus, a lot of WWF's philosophy changed. In-ring was more focused on. As a heel, Rock was more in control and had a strong hold on the match. It was paced to have him dominate for the most part and make the babyface look good. This is basically a regular heel, and that's exactly how he wrestled, you know? Like, I'm not gonna try to make it sound like it's anything special, but Rock as a heel wrestled a very normal style that you just know about. Everyone knows that regular heel style. It didn't allow for much creativity for him. As a face, it was the opposite, of course, but you saw more improvements. This one is very one-sided because of how short Rock's career was. It didn't allow for much creativity for him. As a face, it was the opposite, of course, but you saw more improvements. This one is very one-sided because of how short Rock's career was. It's obvious where we're going with this one. It's easily face. The thing is, we didn't see much of him as a heel compared to his face run later on. I give it to Face Rock based on his 2001-02 run, where he downgraded his character but upgraded in ring. I'd take this one because he had so much ring awareness. It felt like he worked so much on his cardio and stamina, a lot of energy from him. It's something to say that Eddie Guerrero, one of my favorite matches of his, was against The Rock. It wasn't just about the opponent being The Rock, but the chemistry between both men. This match is the best example of how much better and on point Rock was that year. His moves flowed so well into another. The selling was top notch, but then again, that's something he always had down. There was more moves in his arsenal, and it felt like he was willing to push himself even further, but then he went to Hollywood. He wasn't the same again. It's very unfortunate because I think Rock in the 2000s could have been the very best wrestler of the decade if he stayed. He had an all-around talent in 2002. The storytelling in his matches were amazing, and it was always at its best when he was on the losing side. He sold losses like nobody else at the time. Face Rock was definitely better because he gave more to his opponents and also had a better understanding of the squared circle, although that was later on in his run. So there it is. Heel versus Face Rock. There's a couple of differences between them, obviously preferences, but overall, who do I prefer? Because to be honest, even though you look at it here, it's like Face Rock wins, but personal opinion, I'm gonna go with Heel Rock. If you're like, why the Heel Rock? Because there's just something special about the heel version of The Rock. He has more freedom to be who he is. When he's face, he ended up being downgraded in 2001, so it kind of goes against him, you know? Other than that, all around, I just think Rock is better suited as a heel. Especially when you have a face like Stone Cold Steve Austin around, as they did in 1999 and 2003. It really makes sense, you know? That's his role. The Rock's role is obviously as a face, but it's a little more so as a heel as well. It felt like he felt more comfortable as a heel, although I just mean that by a small percentage, you know? Just not by much, you know? Because he was a great face. He was a great baby face, one of the very best of all time, which is cool, you know? He wasn't a traditional baby face who was like, I smile all the time at his prime. He was that guy that didn't smile, raise the eyebrow, beat up the McMahon-Helmsley regime, the McMahon-Helmsley family, the McMahon-Helmsley faction, all that. It was amazing, but I'm gonna go with Heel Rock, so yeah. Alright, what did you guys think of The Rock? Please comment down below, and that's for this video. Make sure you hit the people's elbow on the like button and perhaps the rock bottom on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.